Hi, I'm Kimmy, the clitoris queen, the vulva truth teller, no shame, just facts, bringing you a blend of education, curiosity, and the kind of real talk we didn't get when we were growing up. And this is why I have this little guy here, my little clitoris microphone wand, who helps me get through these conversations. Here, nothing is too much, nothing is weird, and nothing is off limits when it comes to understanding the vulva, pleasure, relationships, and sexual well-being. So settle in, open your mind, and get ready to feel informed, empowered, and maybe even a little bit turned on by your own growth. Before we get started, I want to say it softly. This conversation is about sex, and pain, and bodies, but really it's a conversation about safety, about listening, about the quiet ways our bodies have tried to protect us, even before we had the words to understand what was happening. What I'm sharing comes from my own life, from my work as a nurse, and from the many people who have trusted me with their stories. Some of this might land really close to home, some of it might feel tender. Take what fits, leave what doesn't. There is no rush here, nothing to fix, just an invitation to listen to your body, and maybe to mine too. Growing up, I was told a very specific story about sex, that the first time would hurt, that it was normal to be painful. There was just something you pushed through, and I believed that. Even though it never really made sense to me, I mean, our bodies can birth babies. A cervix can soften and open to around 10 centimetres. The vaginal canal can stretch and adapt in extraordinary ways. So I kept wondering, if our bodies are capable of that, why does sex hurt for so many of us? I didn't have the language back then, but I know now that sex was never introduced to me as something slow or safe or even mine. When you really think about it, what does sex mean to you? Most of us are taught directly or indirectly that sex equals penetration, full stop. But sex can actually be so much broader than that. It can involve all the senses: touch, taste, smell, sound, eye contact, and all those things alone can open up real pathways to pleasure and orgasm. Sometimes that can look like slow, intentional touch, or a massage, or even just bringing in a scent, or a partner talking to you in a way that feels grounded and present. Sometimes it's as simple as being able to say, "I like that," or "This makes me feel safe," or "Can we slow down?" I mean, like in a very real nervous system-based way. At its core, sex can be about presence and communication and connection, just not an act, but an experience. Because fear doesn't come from nowhere, it's learned. It settles into our body quietly over time until bracing just feels normal. For so many women and people with vulvas, our earliest messages about sex are confusing and contradictory. Be flirty, but don't be a slut. Be desirable, but don't want it too much. If it hurts, that's normal. Just get on with it. Relax. Have a drink. So the body adapts. It tightens. It guards. It prepares for something it doesn't fully trust. And then there's the lived experience. So many women carry vulval pain from pressure, obligation, boundary crossings, trauma, gynecological interventions, childbirth, and bowel surgeries, just to name a few. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's wrapped up in experiences that were meant to be normal, but never felt that way in the body. Even when the mind says yes, the body still might remember something else. Have you ever wanted to say no when actually you've said yes? I know I have. Most of us start having sex young, without real education about arousal or anatomy, without language for ongoing consent, without permission to slow down or to stop. Sex should never feel like something you owe someone. It's not a task. Your partner's feelings are theirs to hold, just as yours are yours. When sex becomes something you have to do instead of something you choose to do, it loses its sense of presence. Over time, that can turn into resentment, disconnection, and feeling unheard. And again, the body notices. When it doesn't feel safe or represented, it responds protectively. Pelvic floor muscles can tighten without even realizing it. Arousal doesn't build, lubrication is harder to access, and then pain shows up, not because the body is failing, because it's asking to slow down. When sex is approached with patience, care, and mutual respect, it can shift from just having sex to having really good sex, grounded in safety, connection, and genuine desire. Now add cultural and religious shame around pleasure, add medical systems that dismiss pain, something I've seen again and again as a nurse, and something I've had to reckon with in my own role. Add media that skips consent entirely and rushes straight to penetration with no communication or care. Suddenly, sex isn't just sex. It's expectation. It's risk. It's exposure. It's vulnerability. Fear doesn't show up because we don't want intimacy. It shows up because our bodies are trying to protect us. Tightness, avoidance, numbness, anxiety. These aren't failures. They're intelligent responses to stories we've been told and the experiences we've lived. That was my story too. As a child, I experienced sexual abuse. I didn't understand the connection for years. I just knew my body wouldn't cooperate and I couldn't use tampons and sex toys hurt. Sex was awful and I honestly thought my body was broken. It took a long time to realize that I wasn't broken at all. It was protecting me. For centuries, bodies with vulvas have been judged by how well they contain, how well they please, or respond to somebody else. Tightness became linked to youth, purity, desirability, even worth. Never well-being, never pleasure, just how a body felt to someone else. And that belief is still very much alive today. There's such a deep misunderstanding of anatomy. A healthy, aroused vagina is meant to soften, lengthen, open. Yet that response is labelled as loose. While tightness, often a sign of fear or lack of safety, is praised. So we learn to hold ourselves. But holding was never the goal. When sex is rushed or disconnected from safety, the body remembers. And when we start really listening, we realise the pain was never the problem. It was the message. Mine eventually came with a diagnosis of vaginismus. Vaginismus is one of the leading causes of painful sex. It's the involuntary tightening of the vaginal muscles, making penetration, tampons, toys, all feel painful, sometimes impossible. For some people, it starts with fear of pain, which makes sense when you're told that it's going to hurt. For others, it's followed by trauma, abuse, childbirth, or surgery. It becomes a cycle: trying, pain, fear, tension, hypervigilance, avoidance, trying, pain, fear, tension, hypervigilance, avoidance, over and over and over again. Healing it isn't about forcing the body to open. It requires a whole person approach therapy. Pelvic floor physiotherapists, psychology and sex therapy care, those that are the ones that honour both the body and the nervous system, are usually the best for this condition. And still, there is so much misunderstanding. I have a close friend of mine who was told in 2025, which was only last year, that surgery was her best option for vaginismus by cutting through the nerves of her vagina. What the actual? Are we still in the 1900s? This seems so barbaric to me. There was zero discussion around why she has been suffering from vaginismus. And I am just absolutely baffled as why that would be number one option to help a woman with vaginismus. Hearing that cracked something open in me. It showed me how quickly pain is treated and as something to be removed rather than something to understand. For a long time, I thought healing meant pushing through, trying harder, forcing my body to do what I thought it should do. But healing didn't really start when I tried to open. It started when I stopped fighting the protection. Psychological therapies helped me most, not by endlessly rehashing the past, but by gently teaching my nervous system that now was different, that I was safe, that my body didn't need to stay on guard anymore. There's help out there, and it comes in so many different forms. There's pelvic floor physios, occupational therapists, psychologists, osteopaths, and others. There's no one right path. It's about finding what feels supportive and suitable for you. And I want to say this clearly, like I'd say it to a friend. Pain doesn't mean you're broken. Lightness isn't failure. Avoidance isn't weakness. These are intelligent survival responses from our body that learned how to keep you safe. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's this. Your body is not the enemy. It never was. The work isn't about forcing change. It's about building trust, slowly, kindly, and in your own time. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. And thank you for staying with yourself, even in the tender places. And yes, when sex is approached with patience, thoughtfulness, and mutual respect, it really can shift from just having sex to experiencing great sex, grounded in safety, connection, and genuine desire. Thank you for listening. No shame, just facts.